Today's video is brought to you by Upstart.
Hey, brother!
And welcome everyone to another Super Carlin Brothers spoiler review. Today, we will be talking about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
Let's dive on in.
Hey, brother!
Guys, before we dive on in, I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Upstart. Financial responsibility is a big deal, so make sure you're always doing your homework and making the right decision for you. Guys, I remember getting my very first credit card ever, and I was so excited because it had 0% financing for 18 months, a glorious period of time. Now, I never really ran up any major debt on that card or anything, but I do remember being in for a huge surprise when that introductory rate ran out, and all of a sudden I was being charged 21% interest on the balance. And that is where Upstart can actually help. If you have credit card debt that is out there with huge interest loans on it, this is a great way to consolidate into one easy payment. They're a bit of a revolutionary lending platform in that they go beyond the traditional credit score when determining your worthiness. They take into account your education and job history to get the best rate for you. It's fast, simple, and easy to do. Most people find they actually get their funds the very next day. If you guys would like to find out how low your rate could be, you can do so by going to upstart.com/SCB. It seriously only takes a few minutes and will not affect your credit. Again, that is upstart.com/SCB. Link is in the description down below. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So we're talking 42 years of story.
Yeah.
Coming to a close.
Yes.
We saw it last night. We've only seen it once so far.
Once.
Sometimes we have 2 viewings under our belt by the time we come to the review. First thoughts.
Okay. My first thoughts are, walking out of the theater, I was really happy.
You were?
I was really happy. I was like, man, that was fun. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
You're happy. Okay.
Yes.
You've slept on it.
I've slept on it. I'm still happy. There's a few more things that I have sort of just some like questions about that I don't feel like are essential to the plot. I feel like it did a pretty good job wrapping up the entire saga. I think there were some decisions that were, well, that's a bit cheesy, but also I totally understand why you had to do it, and I'm okay with it. Yeah, I liked Rey's story. I thought this maybe the overarching theme, and if you want to agree with me or not, was sort of the idea that even if you have done bad things or had bad things happen to you, that doesn't have to define you.
Sure, and actually I wrote down, it's a quote from Dumbledore actually, but there was one of the things that I was trying to peel back as like a key theme of this movie is basically that sentiment that Dumbledore gives us, that it is not what someone is born, but what they grow to be. Because I think ultimately that did also come into effect a little bit in terms of, you know, Rey coming to terms with the reality of who she is.
Right. Ooh, yeah, they gave us like a really, really definitive answer.
They really, really did. The other tidbit that I wrote down, this is the best version of how I can give my brief, almost one-line synopsis of the movie, is that I enjoyed the movie, but I think that the overall story of the trilogy did not have a clear outline, and it shows.
Interesting.
Yes, so that is the best sentiment that I've been able to come up with. You could feel the story differences and difference of opinion between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams. Like, I felt like there was a lot of like J.J. Abrams left The Force Awakens here, and then Rian Johnson took it in this direction, and then J.J. Abrams was like, I'm going to take it back to my original story no matter what it takes.
See, I have written down as well, Johnson versus Abrams, and
that might be the review title right there.
That might be the review title, Johnson versus. So I think there's 2 ways you can look at it. Either that, yes, Abrams really disliked what Johnson did in The Last Jedi and just said, I'm just gonna twist it.
Right.
I'm gonna do that. I listened to all the fan feedback because it seemed like any issue that people have been raising for the past 2 years about like, well, what about this? Or wasn't that a dumb decision? Or why don't we have an answer for this yet? He was like, I got you covered.
He's like, don't worry. All of you guys who have been upset, I will fix it. The things you're upset about? My personal interpretation is not that he was unhappy with it. Okay.
Perhaps, but that The Last Jedi is just supposed to introduce a lot of problems.
And that's fair.
It's all set up. Like this was just resolution for me. Like you had questions, great. You were supposed to have questions. Thank you for asking. Here are the answers.
Okay, and so we might have a little bit too much of like how the sausage is made going on here, where like the like your son Luke, for example, when he watches the all of the movies back to back to back to back, he's not going to be aware of all the background politics that are going on. He's probably not going to be nearly as invested in this middle of the path director change. Like I bet it won't be the type of thing that the average viewer will even think to realize that it wasn't just one big continuous story.
I mean, because the thing is, right, if you watch The Last Jedi and then immediately turn on The Rise of Skywalker, like any of the issues I think you might have had with The Last Jedi are just they're not gonna like wash over you for 2 years.
Exactly.
You know, you're just gonna like watch the next thing and be like, oh, like everyone, for example, will start in with Luke throwing the lightsaber, like really controversial. Some people were like, that was great. He is like, this is a stand. Some people really loved it. Other people were like, no, how could you do that to Luke Skywalker? How dare you? And then in this movie, Luke very clearly, as a force ghost, catches a lightsaber and like almost like winks at the audience and is like, that's no way to treat a lightsaber.
Oh, okay. And so that's one thing that I absolutely want to talk about, because I was one of those people. I hated that Luke threw the lightsaber. Like, and to me, I don't care if it comes from a meaningful story. I don't care if it comes from themes. It comes from like my own personal attachment to the dumb thing. You know, it's like I care how the lightsaber is handled, and I wanted that moment to be epic, not like a throwaway moment, which it literally turns into. But I will say that literally I said out loud in the movie theater when she threw the lightsaber and Luke catches it, I literally said out loud, oops. Like, I was like, I can't believe they did that.
Oh no.
Like, that was a decision where one way or another, that curtain was fully peeled back for me, where I was like, I'm looking at two directors on opposite sides of the shoot, sitting in their chairs, glaring at one another with this sense of like that is where my mind went.
No, see, it's interesting that your mind went there, because I was like, when he caught it, I was like, I also sort of had like the little like the politics of it running through my mind, but I was also like, I'm much more okay with Luke having thrown it now, because this is like, it's like a redemption story. It's like, if Luke could do it, we wouldn't need Rey. So they have to sort of tear down Luke, you know, a little bit. And like, to me, yeah, it was bothering me forever that he just tossed it aside, because I feel like so much of like the way I grew up, like Luke Skywalker was like one of my heroes, you know? And it's like, if Luke Skywalker doesn't care about lightsabers, then what was it all for?
Oh,
you know?
right.
I mean?
Yes. No, absolutely fair. Okay, so then on the note of Luke's story then, were you able to follow the narrative that was Luke recognized this problem, Luke also realized the solution that Ben and Rey ultimately came to, which is that you need these wayfinders in order to get to the place to do the thing, and Luke failed in his mission to do so, and therefore he basically just like left himself to die helpless on this island. Is that what happened? Because I will say there was a weird thing happening here where Star Wars Battlefront 2, the video game, does give you a glimpse into Luke on the hunt for something in Palpatine's.
It is true.
Like, what I don't even know what it was called in his storage
like, hidden
unit.
Palace. Yeah. So in Battlefront 2, you play a level where you break into one of Palpatine's vaults.
Yes.
And Luke comes in, and there's all this really cool stuff, and he goes through this really boring looking compass, and he's like, I'm just gonna take this. See you. Right. And you're like, all right. And then that compass is in the Last Jedi.
Yeah, you see it very briefly.
Not really important. And they never really gave you any context for what he was doing. Now you can tell, if you were to play it now, having seen The Rise of Skywalker, you would know he was looking for the compass because he was looking for this place. But I don't think his like failure to find it is why he abandoned himself to the island. I think the reason for that was still because he felt like he failed Ben Solo, and he unleashed Kylo Ren on the galaxy, and as a result, that's why he was stepping back. Okay. I think looking for Palpatine's palace or whatever that it was, I feel like was just one of the missions Luke was on as a Jedi Master following the fall of the Empire.
Okay, so next question for you then. Does Luke in The Last Jedi know who Rey is the moment she arrives?
Ooh, they kind of make it sound like that, don't they?
I would argue that they kind of make it sound
Yes.
like that. Like he's not like because there's a very distinct moment where she arrives on Octu, which is the island, right? And she finally is like, she's been following him, and all of a sudden she's like called to the tree, and she goes in, and that's where like the ancient Jedi texts are, and he follows her in, and he's like, "Who are you?" And it's like, if he knows, he is doing a better job acting than Mark Hamill is at acting as Luke.
Oh, okay, so the "who are you" question is twofold, because I've never gotten the feeling that when he asked Rey, "Who are you?" that he was asking her to identify
her identity.
Sure. He was asking her to ask herself who she is.
Okay.
And that is how I have interpreted that. But Star Wars is full of J.J. Abrams is full. Well, he didn't direct that one, but Star Wars is full of very vague lines like that, where you can really take it two ways. Like "I wanted to take your hand." Are you saying that romantically, or you want to join forces? And they really let you just decide.
Yes, absolutely.
Like,
right.
You don't know which way Rey is saying that.
Right.
For most of the movie.
Okay, so anyway, I think all things considered, there sort of was this theme with The Last Jedi, like where Rian Johnson came in and he was basically like, that lightsaber doesn't matter. Where did Snoke come from? Doesn't matter. Rey's lineage doesn't matter. Like Luke's mission. It's like, there's all these things where I feel like The Last Jedi came in and it was like, what you think you know doesn't matter. And then I'm pretty sure what we see in this is all of those things are basically brought back into focus, and you're going to see an enormous amount of like, no, they matter. They definitely matter.
No, but see, I think I'm okay with it because it's supposed to be representative of like the correct path having lost its way.
Okay.
Like, because this is like a big criticism I think people have of some of the prequels, is that the Jedi Order doesn't act very Jedi-like, and they're like, this isn't how the Jedi Order would be.
Sure.
But it's like, no, that's the point. The point is that the Jedi have lost their way. So of course you're upset with them. Of course they don't seem like the Jedi, because they're not like the best version of the Jedi.
Right.
They're the Jedi at a breaking point where the Emperor is about to destroy them.
Right.
It's like, of course. So I think that's sort of how I'm internalizing it anyway.
Okay.
Does that work for you? Or I don't know.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I think that like in some capacity, and this is another thing with Star Wars as a whole, now that we have a complete picture, part of what I'm attempting to do is decide whether or not at this point in time you are supposed to watch the movies in chronological order. Like, start with episode 1, watch the Star Wars stories as they fall in between each of the respective movies, and you go 1 through 9, and everybody just lets go of the fact that, because at this point in time, the big thing everybody wants to preserve is the reveal that Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Of course.
Everyone already knows that. Like, it's going to be hard to exist in this world without knowing that information. Like, have we reached the point in time where we let that go? And it's like, you start with episode 1 and you watch the whole journey unfold.
No, I'm not letting that go.
Okay.
I would say, I know we made a video once upon a time, the correct order to watch Star Wars.
Right.
And that was when there was only 6 movies. Now there's 9. And to me, the
11.
appropriate order, well, there's 11, but 9 official episodes.
Sure.
The appropriate order, at the moment to me, having not thought about it too heavily, would just be in release order.
Release order.
So
okay.
4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way they were released to the world. That's the way the writing was intended for you to have certain information at certain times.
Right.
It's
weird to me how this review is both of this final installment and now also of the story as a whole.
Well, it kind of has to be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, I feel like your opinion of The Last Jedi was not so high.
Well, okay,
or
so
has it changed having seen the movie?
I have sort of like skitter-scattered, for lack of a better term, where I think I have seen faults with it, and there were things that I personally love about Star Wars that I thought that it sort of like spat in the face of.
Okay.
And like, but I think that those are things that the more time and energy that I have put into like reassessing that movie and understanding that movie, I don't think there's any argument that anybody can make that movie doesn't have massive depth.
It really does. I think it is aging well.
I think it is aging well,
Yeah.
and I think in the fullness of time there will be a a coming around to that story and sort of like what it means to the whole.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. I think right now where my mind is at most, and I almost literally see this review as like a therapy session. Like I almost feel like I should be laying on a couch.
We have a couch.
We do have a couch. Where I don't know how I feel about this movie yet.
Interesting.
Like I'm having, I don't even want to say that I'm having a hard time. It's almost like I need to hear my own thoughts come out in order to see how I feel about them, like existing out in the world. So
Right.
I'm like nervous as we're doing this review based on how I'm like delivering my synopsis of it, but or my interpretation of it, because this movie's all over the place, like quite literally all over the place.
Oh,
like
man.
it is the fastest paced Star Wars movie hard stop.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I think we go to like 15 different worlds in the first 30 minutes of the movie.
It is a lot to keep track of. Okay, I don't know if you noticed this, but in Rogue One, they pulled the same thing where they're just like, bup, 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 you're all over the galaxy.
Right.
And in Rogue One, because it's not a main episode, they put subtitles up for the planets that you're going to that
Yes.
are new. They don't do that in main episodes. So you
They
just
don't.
gotta keep it rolling. You
Yeah,
gotta
right,
just sort
right.
of know. We're in a new place, I'll figure it out later.
Okay.
I don't feel like they should include them, but I also feel like maybe the writing has never required it either.
I think it's helpful when we're having these conversations in order to know like which world we're talking about specifically.
Yeah.
As it pertains to the specific worlds that we go to. I'm perfectly okay with not knowing that this one is called some other type of alien sounding world planet. Like they're all unusual names, and what it really comes down to is that we're on a desert planet that is not the ones that we've already been to.
Okay.
You know, like I'm okay with that.
Okay.
That's perfectly fine. The question for me with that jumping around was, and again, this is where I'm like going into that production mode, writing mode, like autocorrect mode a little bit, where I'm wondering to what extent there was I need to get the story back to where I want it to be, and therefore we need to go to a lot of places so that like you're okay with me starting my story where I wanted it to begin. Part of me felt a little bit like the movie started about 30 minutes into the movie.
I didn't feel that way.
No, okay.
Per se,
okay.
no. I mean, it felt like they had good reasons. I felt like it was okay that they were jumping around so much because they had one really clear through line about why they had to go to each place, and it was because they were hunting down the Emperor's palace or whatever.
Right, the Wayfinder.
The Wayfinder, and they were like following a specific set of clues, and they never really deviated from that. They had like side missions. It was like, oh, we need 3PO to be able to speak a language you can't. Okay, that means I got to go to this friend. They go to that friend. Okay, we got to get out of here because now Rey's been on top of the ship or whatever. You know, like I don't know. They had it felt. It was reasonable to go to each of the places.
Okay.
It wasn't like for the sake of it.
Okay, and you start to see, in fairness, you start to see like Rey using her powers in a variety of different ways, sort of culminating, I think, a little bit in that moment where her and Ben Solo were both literally preventing a ship from leaving atmosphere.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this like massive electrical storm comes like rocketing out of her.
Out of her, yes. I was, interestingly, so that I think they were setting her up early in the movie to have some big like lightning fight later, but it really wasn't. I think that was more for confirmation that she was indeed a Palpatine. Let me talk about that scene though, because it represented one of probably the most annoying thing about this movie. I think was really well represented in that scene, and that was the fake out deaths.
They did it with like everyone.
It was way over the top.
It was, yes, it
okay.
was. And like, so I was, quite frankly, Chewie hit me the hardest.
Oh my gosh, yes. So you think Chewie died, and like, oh man, I'm not, it's weird because I don't want to sit here and be like, man, I wish they just killed Chewie, because like, I'm happy Chewbacca's alive, but I'm also like, oh, it was so frustrating that they faked it. It was like, that is...
It was frustrating that they faked it. It was frustrating that they faked it in a way that, why would there have been another transport?
Yeah.
Like they were like, oh, there were two ships. It was like, no.
No, there wasn't.
That, like,
there wasn't two ships.
I don't think there was two ships.
And it was just like, they really let you feel it.
Yeah.
They let you feel it and believe it.
Right.
And it wasn't like, we let you see Chewie get on the other ship and you sort of know, but obviously the characters will think that he's dead, so don't worry, it's cool. Like,
right.
They did not pull the punch at all. So like, I really thought he was dead.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
And so to me, there was a part, not that I want to say that I wanted Chewie to be dead or anything, but like, there was a part to me where I was like, that is so true. Like like we've lost Leia, we've lost Luke, we've lost Han. Like, why was I not thinking? Of course we're gonna lose Chewie.
Oh, yeah.
Like of course. Like he had to go too. He's just as big a part of it as the rest of them.
Yeah, like they're gonna slowly like really chop off every big character from the old franchise. And,
right.
You know, it's like, but yeah. So they had Chewbacca, who wasn't dead. They had 3PO memory wipe.
Right.
Essentially killing him, which hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, right.
He keeps using all these like phrases where like as if something's just happened or he's kind of like reminded me of Forky a little bit.
Oh, they had a Forky moment where he's like, he's one of my oldest friends.
Yeah.
It's like I've known him my whole life. 2 days.
2 days.
Yeah. That being said, though, I want to pause on 3PO just for a blip. Mm-hmm. Babu Frick, I loved. I loved Babu Frick.
Yeah.
I thought he was adorable and cute and like exactly what I would imagine a droid smith to be like. So anyway, you can continue though. I'm sorry.
We had 3PO die. We had Babu Frick not die. We had Poe's girlfriend not die.
Right.
We had Rey, Kylo, and then I guess you could say Palpatine fake out death in, back in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, right, yeah. Back when it's been a while.
They were like, guess what? Ah.
Right. The real theme of Star Wars is no one's ever really gone.
He does say that.
I know.
But interestingly, not General Hux. They don't fake his death out.
Right.
Which to me was sort of like, come on, he turned.
Right.
Of all the people.
I know. The guy who gave like the major super Nazi speech in The Force Awakens comes around and he's really just like in this schoolyard fight with Kylo Ren.
I guess he's not, maybe he doesn't really come around. He's still just wants control of it for himself maybe, but they don't fake his death out.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, so the 3PO one they at least set up, they're like, couldn't R2 just back up his memory? And he's like, to his famously bad memory drives. And it's just like, except that, no he didn't, okay.
Right, but he doesn't like fully back him up. It's like he backs him up to like some mission that they had done somewhere along the way.
Right, sure. But man, so the Kamini is the planet they blow up. That's where they go where the droid smith is with Babu Frick and Poe's girlfriend, whose name I can't remember.
Zori
and Babu are down there and they blow up the planet and you're like, no, but then like, psych, they're alive. And you're like, oh my God.
Come on.
To me, Babu and Zori would have been the perfect example of characters you can just kill. Because you meet them, they are endearing. You form a quick connection with them. They're obviously important to the other main cast members. They give them something to fight for. Those are good sacrificial characters.
They are. They're the exact thing. You tee up. You fall in love with them, but they're not like lifelong characters.
Right. They're like the little girl in Game of Thrones, Mormont, the little Mormont leader. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So you're just like, is she super important to everything? Not really. Is she everyone's favorite character? Of course.
100%.
Does that make her death really meaningful, but not affect anything? Yes, that's what you want.
Right.
Or that's a good. But they couldn't do it.
Thinking about it, but no, I know exactly what you mean because they even had that like I thought it was a very adorable moment with Poe and Zori where he's like, "Can I kiss you?" And it was just like you could tell like these are two people who have like a meaningful connection and
they don't even. That's the thing. Like if they had at least kept her alive and then it was like, oh look, they kissed at the end. Like look, it all worked out. But like at the end. They had really good nonverbal acting between the two of them.
It was
really good, but still no.
Yeah, still no.
Like,
yep.
All right.
Okay, so that's it. That's talking about a couple of the new characters. We also had Jana, who is the girl on the horses.
Oh yeah.
And then we also have Dio, who, by the way, was voiced by J.J. Abrams himself.
Oh really?
What did you think of both of them?
I thought she was fine. I thought it was cool when they were riding horses on the Star Destroyer. That was really fun.
That was sort of like a clever,
Yeah, I thought that gave Finn's character a little bit more to do. It seemed like there was maybe like a little romantic tension between the two of them.
I have Finn's love life written down here because. Where? What was going on with Finn's love life?
Dude.
Like, was it Rose?
Right.
Was it Jana? Was it Rey?
Oh my gosh, yeah. They tee you up twice with a, Rey, I never told you. And then you're like, maybe that was a funny thing. And then Poe brings it up a second time. You're like, are we still talking about that? Yeah, we're still talking about that, yeah.
Right.
And it's like, you think what he was going to tell her was that he loved her, because that's sort of been... Like, obviously in The Force Awakens, he has, like, a crush on her.
Yes.
And then in the second movie, he's like...
cute boyfriend?
Yeah. He's, like, wholly motivated by saving Rey.
Yes.
But in the process, sort of forms a bit of a relationship with Rose, who's basically a non-entity in this movie.
Rose is another weird one where I mean, I didn't think that anything that happened with her character was incorrect in this final installment. It was just like I would call that another one of those moments where I could feel the audience in their decisions on what to do with character. Like, so instead of like bringing Rose back in a way, because Rose is like a weird case where like the way that they used her character in The Last Jedi brought her like a lot of ridicule, and that was like really harmful to the actress herself, which is that is horrible.
No, because she performed the role.
She did.
Admirably and great.
That's not the problem. So part of me was excited to see where they would take it in this one. And to me, what I saw was basically they were just like, we introduced Kelly Tran's character. She has to be in it. But she's going to be one of these like people that's like in the base that like you see. Like same with
Maz.
Maz and Leia, Carrie Fisher's actual daughter, Billie Lourd, who plays one of the girls who's like in the camp.
Oh, okay.
Like they're all people that like you're familiar with. You've seen them for 3 episodes now, and it's sort of like, hey, there they are. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, they're sort of like you guys are sort of the voice of the base. You're the people that represent the rest of the army to the audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
we know who you are, and that's well done.
There you go. Yeah, Maz was there, sort of just like you just sort of hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer because I really loved Maz in The Force Awakens.
I know, she was so good.
Then her inclusion in The Last Jedi was kind of shoehorned, and then in this one, she's, like we said. Okay, so let's talk about things that matter, though, because I feel like we've covered a lot of like the little nitty-gritties and everything. We haven't really talked about Ben Solo or Rey or Palpatine.
Yeah.
In the fullness that is their roles that they play in these movies. So let's start with Palpatine because I think that'll tee up Rey nicely, hopefully.
Hopefully.
So we discover basically that Palpatine has been pulling the strings once again ever since the beginning.
Yes.
Which I think is a sentence that we've said word for word 3,000 times.
It's always it's always Palpatine.
It's always Palpatine, and that is one of those, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to watch from episodes 1 all the way through 9, it's if you were to spend a full weekend doing nothing but watching these, it makes all the sense in the world.
Right, you've had one main villain the whole time.
The whole time. So that's the type of thing where I think if you're watching it as like a full picture, you'd sort of be like, there he is. I knew he was like, that makes sense. But we have spent so much time obsessing over like who is Snoke and where did Snoke come from and why was Snoke not like relevant during like the last war? He's like so powerful now.
They explained that like just in like one sentence. You're like, oh yeah, I made Snoke, and they show you like these other like Snoke like creatures he's like got like he's like growing
right
like
in these
you just grew a really old dude out of nothing and then controlled him basically. Weird right? So you're like, that's why he looks old. He's actually really young. He still trained Kylo Ren, but it wasn't really him because it was Palpatine, and Palpatine was actually also talking to Kylo Ren as Darth Vader, and he's just been manipulating him his whole life. Yes,
basically. And when you hear that too, you're like, man, poor Ben Solo. Like poor Ben Solo, been, like freaking dragged through it.
Ooh, yeah. So were you okay with them like having him alive? Because I feel like maybe it needs another watch through to really take it in because it was all happening real fast and right at the beginning. But it sounded to me like the reason he was still alive was because of space magic, dark force, darkness powers. I'm alive.
To me, I wasn't really counting him as alive.
Okay.
Throughout the entirety of the thing, and that could be me interpreting it wrong. And I'm fine with that being the case. But sort of my interpretation of the situation is that he was such a force for the dark side that like it's almost as if he existed in a way as like this disembodied Horcrux that was like speaking through like his physical, like what was his body.
Sure.
Okay. To me, that's sort of what was going on. Like his spirit existed, like it, like almost as if what needed to be proven is that killing his mortal body is not enough to kill the entity.
Right.
And so that to me was sort of, and this is the next question that I have for you, is that basically he is then, in my mind, brought back to life because Rey and Ben Solo are a dyad?
Yeah, diode. I'm not sure. Yeah, they use some word real quick. And because Rey had given Kylo some of her force power, they were like linked in a special way.
Okay, so those are the areas where I don't know how I feel about it yet. Ben seemed to sort of deliver this idea that like we're two parts of the same whole, like I'm the grandson of Darth Vader and you're the granddaughter of Palpatine. To which I'm like, those are not like the
Those
other
are
sides.
two pies, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's not, I don't know how those become one. In the way that they described it. Like, yes, you are both the products of arguably the most powerful Force users that have ever existed.
Right.
But I don't know. Like, I'm not even sure that I could land in the camp that would suggest that Anakin Skywalker is supposed to properly represent, if it's a yin and a yang, I don't think that Anakin Skywalker is supposed to represent the light and Palpatine is supposed to represent the dark, and they make that circle. Maybe that's what they were going for, in that like Luke and Leia and Ben Solo ultimately become like the, you know, voice for the light side.
Right.
And you know, the formation with Rey is sort of like the ultimate balance of the Force. Like that's the symbolic thing that happened, is that like one helped the other, and that action happening was balance being brought to the Force. That's where I'm having a hard time. That's where I'm having a bit of like a midichlorians moment where I'm like what is a dyad? And that was something where I even questioned my own knowledge of lore, where I'm like, is this something that has been introduced and I've just forgotten about it?
No, that hasn't. That was definitely a new word, and they didn't define it very well. And I personally was sort of like, oh, I'm gonna. That was like, as they were saying, and I was just like sort of dropping that into my go check that out later box.
Yes, and that's exactly. So they sort of introduce this idea, and that's, to me, I felt like that is where some of the what should have been super impactful moments of the movie might have like missed the impact, because I was spending so much of like my thought energy while watching the movie to try to keep pace with the explanations that they were giving us.
Okay.
And so I'm not totally sure how I felt about that, and I'm also not totally sure how I felt about Rey specifically being Palpatine's granddaughter.
Yeah.
Because I can't believe how many times I've compared this to Harry Potter now, but I sort of had like the Voldemort doesn't have children.
Oh, that I have written down right here. Okay, granddaughter, whatever. That means that he had a wife or a partner of some kind to produce either Rey's father or Rey's mother, which I don't think they said which one.
They didn't.
And then that also means that he killed his daughter or son in the process of looking for his granddaughter, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, like, why wasn't just his own daughter and or son the person in line for the throne?
I had that same thought where it was like what is the significance of the granddaughter in this relationship? Like why does she become so important as it pertains to the story versus just like your direct offspring? And also, why would your direct offspring not be these powerful Force users that could challenge you in the same way that Rey ultimately was able to?
Yeah, I don't understand. Although in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren says your parents were nobody. They're nothing, right?
Right.
So it seemed like the way they explained that in this movie was like nothing to the effect of they chose not to be someone. Like they were somebodies and they chose to be nobodies to protect their daughter.
Sure.
And that was what he meant by they're nobody. One of them would have been the offspring of the Emperor, but they were like, rather than embracing that in any way, they chose specifically to be complete nobodies to protect their daughter.
Right. Yeah. Which, in a weird way, would almost suggest that all of everything the Emperor created in his lineage were all innately good. Mm-hmm. Right? Like one of them was effectively a martyr, like sacrificing their entire purpose for the sake of their children, who then ultimately grow up to be the counter to the big bad. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing that such an evil force would produce so much good.
Well, I guess on the flip side, then you would have Kylo Ren, who would have been the daughter of Leia and Han, or the son of Leia and Han, and he comes up bad.
That's true. That's okay.
So maybe that's that like yin yang.
Maybe the yin and the yang is the dots that exist. So like Kylo is like the black dot inside of the white, and Rey is the white dot inside of the black.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's how it
Maybe that's visually how you could best, understand that. Okay, so my next question is, what we have to assume is that there is a difference between biologically having children and how that affects lineage, and how Emperor Palpatine created Anakin Skywalker, because Anakin has no father. And we know this. This is a confirmed detail.
Yeah.
Canon. Palpatine manipulated the Force so that Shmi was impregnated with Anakin.
Oh, maybe this is how they're like part of like a dyad then, because Rey was like a biological descendant of the Emperor, whereas Kylo Ren is sort of this like materialized descendant because he manipulated one half of the Force.
Okay,
that's making more sense.
I'm okay with that explanation. The weird question that I was maybe wondering is, are they somehow cousins? Like, I mean, not biologically, I don't mean to make it weird, but like...
Yeah, I'm gonna call them Force cousins.
Force cousins.
That's
I like
what they
it.
are.
Okay,
yeah,
they're Force cousins. Okay. So then, the other thing about this movie is that, and maybe there's something to be said for epic finales to epic stories can only end in a handful of ways. At times, I felt like we had some major Game of Thrones moments.
Yes.
And some major Avengers Endgame moments.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you had?
Just some Harry Potter.
Oh, and absolutely, yeah. I've already touched on Harry Potter for sure.
About that. So yes, to me, they very quickly are like, hey, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Sorry, Rey, Finn, Poe, you three, you're gonna go on a magical quest to find a thing to lead you to the dark guy to kill him.
Right.
Just like, yeah. And like the fast-pacedness of the movie reminded me immensely, even as I was watching it, I was like, this is exactly like reading The Deathly Hallows. Maybe not the movie The Deathly Hallows, but the book. It's like, you get to the Bill and Flora's wedding, and then the Ministry falls, and then it is like, boom, it is like non-stop action until the end. And that is exactly how this movie was. It was like, all right, Rey, Finn, and Poe are getting on the Millennium Falcon, and sprint.
Right, and go.
And here we go.
Right.
It was like, yeah. And I mean, I loved that. I didn't have any problem with that at all.
No, yeah, sure.
Yeah, Game of Thrones, boy, oh boy, was that throne so Game of Thronesy. I was like, boy, there's something cool about a nice big chair in there.
Right. Like, you know who ended up on the Iron Throne? Rey destroyed it. That's the answer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then, boy, the Endgame stuff.
The Avengers assemble.
Like, the Avengers, well, okay, there was two big ones.
Okay.
Two big ones.
Okay.
One is the arrival of the civilian army to the Sith whatever fleet. And that could not have been more Avengers Assemble. Where like Thanos has got his giant, super, mega, massive force, and he's just looking down at Captain America like, "What you gonna do?"
Right.
And then
Cap
all of a
shield's
sudden,
broken in half. Everyone's beat to crud.
all of a sudden, boom! This massive, impressive army shows up, and you're like, "It's time to go." Yeah. So it was like that was and maybe it's because they came out in the same year, but like it was immediately reminiscent of Endgame. And then it might not have been so bad, except that the final solo battle happening between the Emperor and Rey literally uses the same words almost.
Right.
It's just like
I couldn't believe it when Rey goes, "I am Iron Man."
I know.
It's like
she may as well have. It was. I mean, the Palpatine's like, "I am all of the Sith," and it's just like, you mean you're inevitable? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Like, I mean, I am inevitable, I am Iron Man, I am all the Sith, I am all the Jedi. It was just like, it was the exact same.
It was. I mean, that being said, I still thought it was epic.
Me too.
Like,
I
think that you're like the final battle, like watching Rey sort of like, stand up and the two lightsabers and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was really cool.
Oh, what'd you think of Leia having a lightsaber?
Okay.
Or Leia's Jedi training? Because this was another Abrams Johnson.
This is absolutely okay. So how did Leia fly through space? Because she is a trained Jedi.
Exactly. Oh, you thought we brought that out of nowhere and that Leia was just sort of like passively Force aware? No.
No, Leia beat Luke, basically, is what I saw in the forest where they were like dueling.
With their blinders down.
With their blinders down. Yeah, because like and so I thought it was cool to think that his first student would be Leia.
It makes sense.
Basically following, all of the fallout. Like, she needs to be taught the ways of the Force and everything. And I do think that was another one of those, like, why did Leia fly through space? Because she is very powerful with the Force, which
Right.
I don't think anybody has ever really questioned. Like,
Right.
I've never had an issue with the idea that Leia is absolutely Force sensitive. The thing is that I always felt like she was Force sensitive in a much, much more passive way that is fitting for her position as general.
Right.
Like, she is, and maybe in the same way that I don't really want Yoda to like go out there and fight with a lightsaber. It's like, I want him to be using the Force to be wise.
Right. Yoda is the leader. He's not management.
Exactly.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Like
he's telling all of his little supervisors what to do. He's got the direction of the company in mind.
Yes.
You guys carry it out and I'll tell you wise things.
And so I think that that's always the like what my relationship with Leia would have been, is that like she yes, she is powerful, yes, she is to be respected. I had never really thought of her as a warrior.
I think this is exactly it though. It's like it's okay for her to be trained as a warrior, but for her still not to be like going into battle. It's like she's such a good general who's, even though she's trained in the Force, she's more valuable sitting in the room commanding people.
Right.
Whereas Luke, maybe not such a hot leader, but boy, put him in an X-Wing, he's like he is more valuable on the field of battle.
Right.
Like both of them can use a lightsaber, great, but...
So here's a question for you then. Do you think at any point in time we were ever supposed to witness Princess Leia wielding a lightsaber in combat?
What do you mean? Like...
So almost all of Leia's, and we haven't actually talked about this yet either, almost all of Leia's scenes in this movie was from footage that was basically used from what was recorded for The Last Jedi and then reappropriated to make sense with this story.
Yeah.
If Carrie Fisher had been available to obviously be like in this film, like, is that something where do you imagine at some point in time the setup was for her to go into battle with Rey?
No.
No.
Okay, I don't think we were ever supposed to do that.
Okay. So in that case, I thought it was cool that Leia had a lightsaber. I'm not sure how I felt about the design of the lightsaber. All
right.
Which that's very, very nitpicky and
Right.
purely opinion based and not anything else.
Doesn't really matter to the story. Yeah.
No. But lightsabers in general, there were so many times. So of course we came into this movie with our one big theory being the white saber theory.
Which called it BT Dubs. Wrong character, but I'm giving us a yes on that.
I think it's the same hilt though. I think she had Kylo's hilt at the end.
No, it was from her staff.
It was from her staff.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought it was from her staff.
So I'm not sure about that. Yeah, that maybe you're right. Maybe that's like why it didn't have the exhaust ports, but it still had like a much more industrial design. Like it was very like robust.
Oh, I am so waiting for someone somewhere to, in the expanded universe, to go recover that lightsaber.
Yes.
Like I'm waiting for like 20 years down the line, someone is gonna reignite the exhaust ports or something. You're gonna be like, no,
they found it.
No way.
The wreckage of the Death Star.
Yeah.
So I think that is very possible, and I also think the fact that Rey buried Luke and Leia's sabers.
Yeah.
Is like,
Oh.
we don't ever have to touch them again, and I think that people will be upset if we do. But I also feel like someone buried a seed for the possibility of he or she who wields Luke's saber is...
Yeah, like
know.
It's out there.
Right, it's
Yeah.
like they left them somewhere.
It to me feels like the sort of thing where she buried these things here. Like it would not surprise me if in some future iteration people come to Tatooine and they find, just sort of in the background, they like arrive at this area where Luke's childhood home was, and it's like an oasis now, like that has naturally occurred because the lightsabers are like in the ground there. And like no one really understands why all of a sudden this vegetation started growing and stuff. But
I sort of love that.
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
brings life to the area because like they were moisture farmers, like
yeah,
like in a desert. You know,
Oh, yeah.
like there was nothing.
Dude,
I love that.
How did you feel about her going to the Lars homestead?
To be honest, it was not exactly the place where I was like, oh, of course,
Mm-hmm.
because for one, Leia's never really had a relationship with that place.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of weird, and it also culminates with this moment of somebody walking by and been like, you know, who are you?
Yeah, could someone need to walk by and justify the title of the movie?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
who are, like very last sentence basically.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Rey who? Okay, why do you think Rey becomes a Skywalker?
I think because she was trained by Luke. And she was literally called Leia, like master.
Okay.
And I think she sort of, in her own way, like was in love with Kylo Ren. As I don't know if we can come back to that. who was also a Skywalker.
Well, he's a
in
Solo.
a way. It was Solo, but you know, descendant of Vader. Like she wouldn't want to like still be a Palpatine.
No, I guess not. So okay, in that moment, the two scenarios that I saw happening were her saying Skywalker or them saying like Rey who, and I could almost hear her just saying just Rey.
Oh.
And it would have been like, even that I think would have been slightly more in line with the idea of her holding like the lightsaber at the end.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Maybe,
I feel like you had like maybe a bit of a
well, I'm just thinking about it right now. Maybe I'm like, okay, so because as we got to like the very end, I was like, it was going through my head like they haven't really explained the title of the movie yet.
Right.
I was trying to decide if I thought maybe Rise of Skywalker could be how it could also reference like Ben Solo, because he kind of like rises again back out of the ground or like returns to Ben Solo, but that's still at Solo, not Skywalker as much. I guess, yeah, no. I'm okay with her calling herself Skywalker. I thought it was cool. I liked the ending. Like when they went back there, I got like such nostalgia feels like going back.
Oh, really? Okay, so you liked it.
I loved it. I was like,
okay.
oh man, it's so cool that she's there. Like what? No, I liked it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the type of thing. There's absolutely something to be said. Like my favorite movies have become my favorite movies usually based on multiple rewatches, and like the more that I get to know the story, and the more that like I start to quote it and understand it, and like look forward to moments, and like you know that there's absolutely something to be said for that. Like where I haven't had the fullness of time to like digest the entire experience yet. So I think that that's certainly something to keep back there as well.
Yeah. What did you take away from the Rey Kylo or the Rey Ben kiss? Were you thinking they were going to go that far, or was it just going to be like, you saved me?
It's tricky because I remember being upset with Rogue One for, and I don't even know that this is the case. Like, and I know that's hotly debated, and maybe that's part of like what Star Wars is. It's like interpret it as you will. But Cassian and Jin at the end sort of like, you can't really tell if they're like, you know, we went to war together and, you know, like we came from different viewpoints of everything. And in the end, like here we are together and like, you know, we are one or something. I feel like that was something where I would have like ridiculed it for injecting a romantic thing. And somehow, even though the fact that they kissed, I guess maybe I didn't even see it as romantic.
I was going to say, like, if you want to interpret it as romantic, I think you totally can. Sure. And I'm sure many people, Raylo across the country, are going to be like, yay!
Like it happened in the only way that it could.
Yeah. But if you want to not interpret it as a romantic thing, and I don't know the appropriate words to describe it, but, like, yes, there was, like, a feeling of, like, this doesn't necessarily have to be romantic.
In a weird way, yeah. And I don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah, I'm sure someone on Twitter or someone out there is going to write an article that perfectly articulates this moment, in a way that I'm like, yes, that's it.
Like why their kiss wasn't romantic,
or something like that. Yeah. I'm okay with it either way. I think I'm not like it was a nice moment.
It was, and I think that like their pull to each other seemed reasonably well established throughout. Like, you know, and obviously they were going to have more impact on one another than anybody else was going to have on them. Other than maybe Han Solo on Ben.
Boy, him arriving. What'd you think of? So almost in back-to-back scenes, we have Han Solo and Luke reappear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Han's reappearance was interesting because forever we've sort of had that conversation about like Kylo Ren basically had these couple of moments throughout the course of the trilogy where he either did or did not kill his father, depending on who like kind of pulled the button.
Right.
Because that was one of those like where in that moment, you don't really know if Kylo's a double agent. You don't really know like what's happening, but it sort of seems like he's put in this position where like he has to act because people will know that they came face to face, and if he didn't kill his father, then his cover is blown.
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't know if in that moment Kylo's like, I have done everything in my power to avoid you no matter what, because if I find you, I have to kill you.
Right.
And I can't do that. And so I've never been able to decide whether or not I felt like basically that last exchange he had with Han was like I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. If he's like, I have to kill you. And Han's like, I got you.
Yeah. I feel like having seen this movie, I think that is more of what happened.
Okay, that was your interpretation. Okay.
I mean, they recreate that exact moment. He says the same words.
He does.
Yeah, and then Han just sort of like reaffirms or like validates him and says like, you do have the strength. And, Yeah. Right. That was interesting because like Han wasn't like a Jedi who could come back as a Force ghost. It seemed like it was much more like Kylo Ren was
manifesting him.
Manifesting him, yeah.
I think that that's what's happening. To me, I would say that if you were an outside person, like if Finn was watching that thing happen, he doesn't see Han Solo.
I agree, yes.
Like, I don't think Han Solo is there physically. Right. I think that that is whatever morsel of light that was left in Ben Solo was basically like, I'm forcing my way out of you, and I'm going to show you that you are good. Yeah, so I liked that moment, and I guess I still want to interpret it more a little bit as well, where I feel like, on the one hand, either he did kill his father, and that was like what everybody would have deemed like you can't come back from, and that was the one way that you could, was basically by being able to effectively come face to face with the situation and be like,
yeah. But I think the situation, it kind of like shows where he's grown. Like where the last time he was like, I know what I need to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Like if he had to kill him in that moment because like, yeah, people would have known. And this time, like the end result of that one was him igniting the lightsaber. The end result of this encounter was him throwing his lightsaber in the ocean. Right. So yeah, boy, that kind of goes both ways still, doesn't it? Yeah. Like maybe he couldn't. Yeah.
So we'll leave interpretation on the table for that one.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Because I thought this was kind of cool. Me and Allie like nudged each other. But Ben Solo walks into Palpatine's palace, throne room, whatever, holding a blaster.
Yeah.
Which is very Han Solo.
Yeah.
Like I that was one of those things where I feel like early on Han has that line where he's like, I'll take a good blaster over an ancient weapon any day.
Well, he didn't have a weapon and he didn't have a lightsaber anymore, so
I know.
Maybe you need something.
Is it supposed to be somewhat symbolic though that he's like tossing back to that idea, like that he's entering that room like with his father's, voice sort of ringing in the back of his head?
I would say so, now that you bring it up. Okay, let me ask you about this moment, because it was funny, but I'm not sure it was necessary. When he jumps down the shaft and like lands on the chain, he goes, ow. It was just sort of like, oh, okay. I guess that was time for a joke. Moving on.
It was, I laughed. I did laugh. I didn't know what was happening in that whole like transgression, because it seemed like Ben Solo is more than his lightsaber, I would say, but like it seemed like he was nothing without it, like almost as if like whether or not he was holding a lightsaber was determining whether or not he was capable of winning a fight with the Knights of Ren.
Yeah. Well, so I've always assumed the Knights of Ren, because man, I really thought we'd get more information about them. We just didn't. I've always assumed they were also force sensitive. So maybe he was fighting like 6 force-sensitive people at the same time, and so he couldn't just like blast them all away with his powers or something. Because if I'm correct, they were the other students of Luke's that he didn't kill.
That is my interpretation as well. Is that is who the Knights of Ren were?
Yeah.
Never really was decided. Never really explained what their origin was, or whether or not those people fizzled out and he found these other henchmen that followed him around. Yeah, they were I think a bit of a plot device. They were like people in extra special armor that meant that your average person wasn't just going to be able to like
blast them with a single shot.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so the other thing though that I want to ask about, we're probably getting too long at some point here, is the harvesting of children throughout the galaxy. To be stormtroopers seemed like a bit of an epidemic, and that was something we saw come up with Finn. We saw it come up with Janna. We like even the harvesting of Rey seemed to sort of like fall into that bucket of sort of like kids are being sought out. Like, and it even seemed like on the planet that Zori was on, it's like there are no kids left. Like Kamini, yes. It seemed like there are no kids left. Like they've all been taken. It like that seemed to be sort of this thing where after, and you have this moment with Finn and Janna where they're talking and they're sort of like, it just hit me like the moment, like I just knew in the moment like that I didn't want to do this. This isn't what I wanted to do. And like they were stormtroopers that just turned, and her whole fleet of people were stormtroopers, former stormtroopers.
Yeah, who were deserters.
So when Finn has this moment where he's like, don't worry, I have a plan for that. Ultimately, his plan for that is to ride horses on top of the Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, I don't know why, I thought that there was going to be a lot more empathy given to the stormtroopers.
Oh,
because they're all victims. Like every single, like they're not bad guys. They are people who have been taken as very young people and brought up in this brutal world to be foot soldiers.
I think there are two things are true. One, that they do recruit children and just brainwash them from birth to be stormtroopers. But I think you can also sign up to be a member of the army. So some of it's volunteer. And I think 3, the reason in particular Kamini was devoid of children was because Emperor Palpatine had come back and they had like revealed the giant fleet, and they were like, earlier in the movie, I think when Hux and Ren were talking, they were saying we're gonna have to start recruiting children again. Like maybe they had done it for a while to build the army, and then they were just sort of going like on a volunteer basis to keep up the numbers.
Okay.
But now that we have to man 10,000 new ships,
right,
we're gonna need more people,
right,
and it's not volunteer anymore. It's not mandatory.
Right. Okay.
And I think they had immediately started enacting that out, which is why all the children on Kamini specifically, or why they were gone
by the time they got there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was something where I wondered if that was going to be folded into the themes of the story or not. I'm not sure that it was ever unfolded.
Yeah.
Because that was something that they seemed to bring up. And so what I really thought was going to happen with Finn is that the big turning of the tides was not going to be the arrival of all of these ships from all over that came just to help.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that somehow Finn was going to like spark this moment in the stormtroopers, and there was going to be like the turn.
Yeah.
Because I did feel like it made me empathize with stormtroopers in a way that has never happened before. The very nature of a stormtrooper or a droid, which is going to be my next conversation, is that they're faceless enemies. That like most of the time nobody really has that many qualms over their death,
right?
Because it's like they're not a character. They're an opposing force that can't shoot well,
right?
And that's about the size of what a stormtrooper is supposed to represent. And then similarly with droids, we have this theme going on where Rey is like very respectful of the droids the whole time. Never underestimate a droid. Like,
yeah.
And we've seen that. I mean, C-3PO has been huge. R2-D2 has been huge. BB-8 has been huge. And even Dio in this one has information that is like very helpful to the cause. And we've seen it with K2SO and Rogue One. We've seen it, just throughout the entire story. That these are not to be underestimated, but for some reason there is some amount of prejudice, even going back to A New Hope, where C-3PO and R2 walk into the cantina and the bartender's like, we don't serve their kind here. Yeah. And it's like, you don't serve them at all. They're droids. Yeah, they don't eat or drink. Like, you don't want them here, but why? And then this is where I even think there could be a possible connection to The Mandalorian. The story that's going on right now is that Mando hates droids. Right. And I think that's like, I don't know whether or not that will ultimately be relevant to Mandalorian. We don't have to spend time talking about that. But so, yeah, I felt like all of these characters that have largely not been given a whole lot of respect, either by the movie themselves or even really us, like we've never really been bent out of shape about stormtroopers going down. I was empathizing with them. Okay. And I don't know if that was maybe a part of the story that I thought was really nicely set up and then never really ultimately delivered. Okay. Interesting. Did you have any thoughts about that? Or?
Well, I didn't particularly. Now that you say it, it would have made sense if you'd sort of like rallied a bunch of stormtroopers or something, and I could have even seen them like doing it in such a way that they broadcast out to like the early First Order people, and you had like the white stormtroopers versus the red stormtroopers or something. Sure. Going down or something like that.
That would have been cool.
That would
the white versus the red. I mean, white represent,
Yeah, right.
Symbolically
Why are they
speaking.
white anyway?
Yeah.
Jeez, so doesn't camouflage at all.
I'd even want to play with the lightsaber. Like the white stormtroopers.
It would have. I thought it was pretty silly that all of those Star Destroyers needed that one satellite to get out. I was like, boy, you got to have a real big switch to pull, don't you? It was so much like Rogue One, where it was like, you have to go pull that comically sized lever. Like, aha! It was just like, are you kidding me? Like, this super advanced giant fleet needs this one tiny satellite down here to like fly out of this cloud. Like, I don't know. That seems like a pretty stupid weakness.
I've had the same situation with Sorcerer's Stone, actually, with Harry Potter, where like there's all these obstacles to get to the Sorcerer's Stone, and it's sort of like, why are they even like beatable at all? And it's because like you can't have a back door into the Sorcerer's Stone chamber room. Yeah. Otherwise, all of your protection is only as good as people who know about that back door. Right. And so, like, they do have to be beatable because people have to be able to get in to get it in case they ever actually need the stone. Right. So it's supposed to be challenging, but not impossible. Mm-hmm. That is the thing that Star Wars has always had. They've always had the one exposed organ that for some reason, somehow, some way, nothing we can do about it. That one thing could ruin everything if they just figure it out.
They figure it out. My.
But does that become part of what Star Wars is too, though? It's like, you gotta hit the big glowing orb in the middle of the thing.
So to that end, what did you think about Planet Killer Star Destroyers?
I was fine with it.
Yeah,
I mean,
too.
it was, you had to have a Death Star.
Yeah,
in some capacity.
Yeah, I was thinking about it and I was like, boy, that's a real big weapon they got there all of a sudden. It seemed like maybe it wasn't quite as efficient as the Death Star, like it had to shoot it for a little while.
Sure.
And eventually it blew up. Regardless, like, if they didn't have any sort of weapon that could destroy a planet, then this threat wasn't really as big as the Death Star.
So,
and for the culmination, you have to have the biggest threat you've had yet. So, like, you already had the Death Star. You had bigger Death Star. You had Star Killer Base, which could destroy like 5 planets at once.
Right.
Now, if you have just a fleet of planet killers...
Effectively, to me, what I saw that as is like, yeah, how do you make the stakes higher than being able to blow up a planet? And then how do you make it bigger than being able to blow up multiple planets? Is literally you have ships that can go anywhere in the galaxy and there's 10,000 of them and they can all blow up planets. Yeah. So it's like you went from 1 at a time to 5 at a time to 10,000 at a time.
Yeah. So I'm most surprised he didn't just have a fleet of Death Stars, you know, that they didn't show us like a giant field of like 100 Death Stars.
Have you ever wondered how the Death Star travels through space?
Oh yeah, they don't really show it very much, do they?
No, it doesn't really seem like it would have thrusters anywhere that would make sense.
And yet, it can go through hyperspace.
Right.
You know?
I like to think that it's got this big giant orb and then right underneath it is like this little like firecracker sized like...
Yeah.
And it's like, that's
boom.
How we move.
Yeah, yeah, we're coming.
Because a ball moving through space just seems super inefficient.
I've always thought about the Death Star that like, it doesn't really need to move very fast.
Sure.
Because it can destroy a planet.
Right.
And you know what can't move at all? Planets.
Planets.
It's like, hey, obviously you probably don't need the functionality of blowing up a planet very often. Like, hopefully you're not pulling that trigger. Even if you're the Empire, you don't want to blow up all the planets.
Well, at some point in
you
time,
want to be
who's
able
left?
to threaten
Right.
people with the planets.
At some point in time, who is left to rule if you've blown up all their planets?
Exactly.
And then it's just like, you know, the 12 of you standing in the Death Star being like, oh, I'm going to have to kill one of you next because you're the next biggest thing that still exists in the galaxy.
Basically.
So,
yeah, I thought that was a bit of a dumb little switch thing that they could just destroy.
Is there anything else that you major want to cover before we give our final review?
I think we have covered just about everything. I will say 2 final thoughts. One, I thought, in the end, Dark Rey, pretty clickbaity.
One thing on that. Do you think that, because that room she went into was kind of mirrored, part of me was wondering when Rey in The Last Jedi walks in and sees like the fogged mirror that like reveals herself on the other side, I was almost wondering if that was like travel through time and space to where what she was seeing on the other side was that room.
Oh, interesting.
Like, so that is the other side of that space.
Ah, interesting. That will take more viewings.
Yes.
Possible.
Okay, continue.
2, Emperor Palpatine does his, like, I'm all the Sith's giant mega lightning storm thing.
Yes.
Pretty ineffective.
Yeah, really all it did was stall a bunch of things. Like, it was like, well, there goes the galaxy.
I know.
Why do they even need a Death Star to begin with if you could literally just destroy every ship that's ever existed?
I know. Well, it's just like... That's frustrating. It was frustrating to me because, like, immediately even Poe gets hit by the lightning. And he's like, oh, everything's backed up. What's going on? Blah, blah. And he's like, your ship didn't even crash. Like, what kind of static shock did you give all these? Like,
Yeah. There was also maybe too many people left at the reunion party after how many they made it seem like died in that battle.
Oh, because they're not, like, outnumbered a little. You know, it's like this mug versus the whole table, you know, and the rest of the table's full of enemy mugs or something.
Enemy,
you know
I love it. I love it.
You can't even see the mug anymore.
There you go.
There you go. This mug. Enemy mugs.
Enemy mugs.
Those are my final thoughts.
Okay. Fantastic. I think that we typically give a scale 1 to 10.
I think we go to 100.
1 to 100. I get it wrong every time.
Yeah.
It's like flipping a coin. I know it's one or the other, and I always just like take my 50-50 shot and I get it wrong every time. Anyway, scale 1 to 100. Give me a score.
I'm gonna give, oh gosh, like an 83.
Oh my god, that's so crazy. Literally the number I've had in my head all morning is an 81.
Wow. Okay.
So shockingly close.
Yeah.
Shockingly close. I would say that I think The Force Awakens lives on as my favorite movie.
Me too.
From this trilogy
and
possibly from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And possibly just movies. I am fascinated to see what happens with this movie. and the way that everybody responds to it. I can't wait to see it more. I can't wait to start peeling back the layers on all the new things that we learned, wondering if there's any long-term implications of any of that stuff. Guys, be sure to leave all of your thoughts and comments in the towel section down below. And like the idea here, we're all on the same team. We all like Star Wars. So let's be sure to be as respectful as humanly possible of each other's opinions and have smart, intelligent conversations where you see other people's point of view and you make glorious counter arguments.
Yes, way to bring balance to the towel section.
That's what I was trying to do.
Exactly.
You get it.
I get it.
Get it.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see any more of our reviews, you can check out this playlist right here. Or if you want to see any of our other Star Wars videos, you can check out this playlist right here. But until next time, bye.